So here we are. We're unscripted, but we've done this before.
We have.
We started publishing Sophie Hannah's Poirot books in 2014 with the Monogram Murders. It was a bestseller on both sides of the Atlantic, and I think has been translated into the best part of 50 languages. And basically, when a book does that, you can't really not do another one. And we're now on book 6, which is a New Year mystery. And it's actually based on somewhere you know well, isn't it, Sophie?
Yes, well, it's set on a fictional Greek island, very small Greek island, called Lamparos, which is fictional in name only because it's based on the real Greek island of Skyros. Has anyone heard of Skyros? It's sort of near Skiathos. It's really tiny, and I know it, and I've been there many times because one of the few things that happens on the island of Skyros is there's a holistic holiday company, and all the holistic holidays take place in this big stone house on this bay called Atsitsa Bay, and I've worked there 3 or 4 times teaching creative writing and coaching writers. And it just occurred to me last time I went that it would just be the perfect setting for a murder mystery. So when I was asked to write Poirot number 6, the first thing I thought was I'd like to do, because I love Evil Under the Sun. That's one of my favourite of Agatha's Poirot novels, and I love that seaside sort of beach holiday setting. So I didn't want to do exactly that, but I thought, what if we had a beachy, holiday-ish setting, but in the dead of winter? And then I thought of the New Year's Eve idea, and then I thought of the plot premise. But the geography, so the bay with the big stone house where all the suspects live, and then the hotel on the other side of the bay, that is exactly based on Atsitsa Bay, on the island of Skyros.
So it's a real place, and I'm really excited that Sophie agreed to take Hercule Poirot overseas, because of course he's known in a number of the more famous novels for his international travels, and getting him out of the UK in dreary old December, I think was a very good idea. And you've set the book on New Year's Eve, and even invented a game for him to play.
Yes, well, I have to admit, so much of this book is taken from real life, everything except the murders, basically. Even down to the fact that in the book, the community of, they call themselves the Very Good Friends, but this community that lives in the big stone house are sort of what you'd call new agey. They're like a slightly cult-like community. And even that was slightly based on real life, because this holistic, the word holistic can cover a multitude of sins. And when I first went to teach in this holistic community, I was slightly startled to find that every day began with all the teachers sitting in a circle, holding hands, and we had to go around the circle and say how we were feeling. And it didn't go down well when it was your turn, if you just went, I'm fine. And lots of people would begin their, feelings recitations by, before they said any words at all, they'd kind of go, okay. And the first time I went, before I knew as much about New Age stuff as I do now, I was like, what the hell is going on here? So even that sort of weird vibe was slightly based on real life. But also, the New Year's Eve game was one that I made up and tried to get my family to play, because I love making up games and forcing people to play them. And my family has got limited tolerance for this. And because this was a New Year's Eve game, they were like, we're sick of playing your strange games. We did a load of them on Christmas Day. We're not doing another one. So I thought, right, I'll put it in my book then. So the game is basically, and, feel free to try this at home. You could do it for your New Year's Eve get-together, and it would work brilliantly, and there probably wouldn't be a murder. But the game is, everyone writes down a New Year's resolution, and it has to be a genuine one. They don't attach their name to it, just the resolution, fold it up, put it in a hat. Somebody who's acting as the compere pulls out the resolutions one by one, reads them out, and the game is that everyone present has to guess whose resolution it is. It's such a great idea. It's such a... yeah. One day I'll make people play it and we'll have... Yes. So it does have to be real because, for example, if I was playing and I put something just to fool people, like my resolution is to go skydiving or abseiling, no one would guess that was me, and they couldn't guess it was me because I'd never do that. So it kind of makes it pointless. So you have to make it a real resolution. It would still be quite challenging, though. Anyway, so this is what happens at the beginning of the last death of the year. And Catchpool, Poirot's sidekick for the purposes of my books, is the person reading out the resolutions. And when he pulls the third piece of paper out of the hat, it's not it is a resolution, but it's also a death threat. It is an announcement in the form of a rhyming quatrain of an intent to commit murder, and the person who is the victim is named. And there's this intriguing detail after saying that the writer of the resolution is going to murder this particular person. It then says that this murder will be the last and first death of the year. And Poirot is intrigued by that choice of words, like, what does it mean? How can something be the last and first death of the year? And why does last come before first? So then obviously Poirot is determined to stop any murder from taking place. And he's not entirely successful in that endeavour because a murder does take place.
I think it's such a thrilling idea. And of course, when we signed up the book, we said, let's do a New Year mystery. I didn't know you were going to do any of that. I know you like games. You invented a board game for one of the previous Poirot books.
Yeah.
So yes, you have history.
But the difference was, so the other game I invented, and I think that was for my fourth Poirot novel, The Killings at Kingfisher Hill, that was called Peepers. The difference was I didn't actually invent the game. So Peepers is referred to throughout Kingfisher Hill, but only in terms of like Poirot saying, Catchpool, this game you've invented is so complicated, I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to play it, because I didn't want to have to invent a whole board game. But with this one, it was a game I'd already invented, so I thought, right, I'll get my fictional characters to play it.
Do you play a lot of games when you go sort of on retreat with your authors?
So when I do my Dream Author retreats, what tends to happen is a mixture of group coaching sessions and one-to-one coaching. So I'll have a one-to-one session with every retreater, and then there'll be some group sessions. But there's never been games. There's lots of chat and drinking and swimming. That's always a big feature. I always make sure there's a swimming pool at the venue. But there was a game at the very last Dream Author retreat, which was an 80s/90s pop lyrics quiz. And it just kind of came up organically because people were saying, oh, I know every song from the 1980s. And I said, right, let's do a quiz. And then I thought, well, I can't impose that on people who are, paying to be here. So I said, well, I'll do a quiz. So I have an encyclopedic knowledge of 80s pop music. You could literally tell me any lyric and I'd probably know it. So I did the lyrics, and I think there were 15 of them. And if nobody got them just on the lyrics, then I would sing that bit of the song. And I would secretly hope that no one would get it because I love singing. So, any excuse to sing. So that was fun.
I won't want to embarrass my colleagues by saying, actually, some of them went doing karaoke the other night. It sounds like we should have invited you. You might have enjoyed that.
I'm always saying to my publishers, have a karaoke thing, because I absolutely adore karaoke. But none of them have ever done it yet.
I can't bear it, but...
But do you sing? Do you join in?
Well, you sort of have to, don't you? If you're in the room, you're not... It's one of those activities you can't really just watch.
It's more fun if you join in.
Well, allegedly. I'm not sure Agatha Christie would have been a karaoke girl. Of course, we're here celebrating her, and obviously you're writing, the new Poirot books, you're writing for her character. Next year's a big year for Agatha Christie. It's 100 years since, I think, probably her greatest book, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, was published. And I know we've got a panel to talk about that later. But I wonder how that book features in your sort of list of, or your league table of Agatha Christie favourites.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, my league table is very personal. I think everybody's is. Roger Ackroyd is undoubtedly an amazingly clever and brilliant book. It's pretty flawless, actually, and the solution and the surprisingness of it is so clever. But despite all that, it is not one of my favourites. That doesn't mean I don't love it. I basically love all of Agatha's books, well, maybe the odd exception where I sort of like them rather than love them. But I definitely love it, but it wouldn't even be in my top 10 because there's others that I just love a lot more. So Murder on the Orient Express has, I think, the cleverest solution in all of crime fiction, and that is absolutely always somewhere in my top 3. Because even when you reread it, I mean, a lot of people don't love it because they say, well, it's just the clever solution, but the rest of it is just a series of interviews. But it is just brilliant. If you like the sort of geeky, pedantic detail, and the fact that the contents page looks like a series of train carriages, which I think is just so clever. So that would be among my favourites. Roger Ackroyd is amazing, but there's nothing in it that makes it one of my sort of special Agatha Christie's.
And I know your favourites change from time to time based on probably which one you've read most recently.
There's a sort of top 7 that are in a different order at any given time. And those will always include Orient Express, Evil Under the Sun, The Hollow, which is amazing, The Body in the Library, which is the first Miss Marple I've ever read, Towards Zero, I think is incredible, Death on the Nile. Death on the Nile is amazing, and I didn't realise quite how amazing it was till I reread it the most recent time. But yeah, I mean, the other big hitter that wouldn't be in my top selection is Five Little Pigs, which again is brilliant. It's just not one of my personal favourites.
Oh, I love that one. It's very, very... That alternative viewpoint thing with the interviewing 5 different characters.
It's a brilliant structure, but it feels a bit kind of... in the way that Evil Under the Sun feels very expansive and showcases everything Agatha Christie did so brilliantly. Five Little Pigs feels almost like a kind of very contained, formal experiment, which succeeds brilliantly, but it's just, I mean, again, I love it. I just don't love it quite as much as some of the others. Another one that's always in my top batch is After the Funeral. Cora, I mean, there's so much amazingness in that book. And Sparkling Cyanide. Love that. And sometimes there's a specific reason. So in Sparkling Cyanide, before the solution to the mystery is introduced, there's like 1 or 2 lines, it's either 1 or 2, where a character, it might be Colonel Race, says to somebody, well, I worked it out because of, and I won't say what he says next, but that thing he says then, I was like, oh, this has got to be one of my favourites forever. I won't say what it is, but if you reread it, notice the bit when Colonel Race is about to introduce a solution, how he says he worked it out, I just think is genius. And often for me, there'll be a tiny detail in an Agatha Christie novel that just makes it instantly a stellar Agatha Christie for me.
Really interesting. I noticed you've picked a lot of early books. There's a podcast at the moment called The Swinging Christies, which focuses on the 1960s. There you are, Mark. That's the plug. Doubtless Dr. Aldridge will come and tell us a bit more about that later. But are you in love with any of the 60s books?
Isn't After the Funeral 60s? No?
No.
What? But it's later.
It is a late
50s?
one. Yes, I think it's 50s.
Okay, so the ones written in the 60s, I'm not sure I know the dates of all of them. Endless Night, I love. Pale Horse. So underrated. That would be in my top 10 for sure. The Mirror Cracked. Now, hold on. No, I'm not saying I'm not saying it's up there. I'm saying I'm going to say something about it. It has the most incredible solution. Just 20 out of 10. But there's something about the delivery of the solution that is kind of muted within the novel. And I thought it was just me being picky. Death on the Nile is similar, actually. Death on the Nile and Mirror Crack both have just genius plots, but there's something about the delivery of the resolution that just feels a bit either brushed over or sort of clunkily done. Anyway, with Mirror Cracked, I definitely felt that. And then I read something that said that that it hadn't been like that originally, but that her publishers had asked her to take out some of the stuff around the solution so that it wasn't too closely identified with a real story. And in taking that out, she'd taken out some of the kind of, presumably, the fanfare that had originally been associated with the delivery of the solution. So if you read it, you'll see what I mean. Like, we're told what happened, but there's no kind of like, da-da, and it is a da-da kind of solution. So that always bugs me about that book. But Endless Night is brilliant. And in Endless Night, she kind of recycles one of her clever other solutions. I won't say which one for anyone who hasn't read them. And I think this is another really bold and brilliant thing she did. She took the same essential solution idea. She's done it at least twice and used it in a different book. And it works because it's done so differently in each case. But I think it's so interesting that she decided to do that when I think a lot of writers would have thought, well, I can't use that because I've used it already. If I could ask her one question, it might be about that. Like, what made you decide that it was okay to do that? Because, I mean, it works brilliantly. But if another writer said to me, should I do that? I'd say definitely not. And I wouldn't allow me to do it. But she just somehow does it amazingly.
But you've written more than 20 books and now in multiple series. Are you not tempted to take a great idea and repurpose it?
Well, no, because then that would be really disappointing for the exact people that I care most about. So the people I really want to enjoy my books are people who love my books. Those are the exact people who are most likely to think, hang on a minute, I read another Sophie Hannah book in which this was the solution. I mean, you just can't do it.
Well, Agatha did it by the sound of it, but...
yeah, I don't think anyone else could do it. Well, I mean, but they can. Well, I don't know. I would genuinely love to know what readers think. I'm pretty sure that if I did it, I'd get some letters from readers saying, this is very clever, but you've done it before.
The lady said, give herself 20 years and then see where she is. I'd run out of ideas, so I genuinely don't know how you or any of the authors who come up to the stage do that. We have an author coming up to the stage in a few minutes, and that's Lucy Foley, who will now be sharing the limelight with you as a successor to Agatha Christie with her new Miss Marple book. How do you feel about not being asked to write the Miss Marple novel?
Oh, absolutely fine. I mean, funnily enough, when we were announcing the Monogram murders back in 2013, that was one of the first questions journalists, I mean, we did that big thing with journalists from all over the world. one of the main questions they asked was, and will you also be doing Marple? And I was like, how hilarious. You know, you hold a big press conference to say you're doing X, and the question everyone asks is, when are you doing Y? But so that made me think, even all those years ago, about Marple, and I just thought, no, taking on Poirot is so sort of important to me and such a big deal. There's no way I would also take on another bit of Agatha's oeuvre, and I don't think it would be a good idea at all. I think, you know, there's so many amazing characters that she created, it makes much more sense for other people, for all us crime writers to kind of share all those characters. And I'm delighted to be joined by Lucy, and that I'm no longer going to be the only one. And as I keep saying to everyone, I'm going to think of me and Lucy as the Cagney and Lacey of Agatha Christie continuation novels.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. I will think of you both as Cagney and Lacey now from now on.
I'm Lacey, obviously, the dark-haired, less glamorous one who wanders around in pyjamas a lot. That's definitely where I definitely fit in there. In fact, I'll tell you a bit of interesting backstory. My first ever job, I was a envelope stuffer. I literally put leaflets in envelopes for the Palace Theatre in Manchester. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes putting leaflets in envelopes got a bit boring. So I decided, I was a big Cagney and Lacey fan, I decided I would brighten up my working day by, whenever anyone rang up, instead of answering the phone and saying Manchester Theatres Limited, which is what I was meant to say, I would say Detective Lacey, 14th Precinct. And I actually got a warning for doing that. My boss was not amused.
Well, I fear that there might be one or two people here who are having to Google Cagney and Lacey because they've never heard of them. Any hands? Yeah, here we go. Anyway, that's something to research and to discover. I promise you'll have a good time. We've had a good time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.